off the wall. There's a slab behind it. And we're gonna go. The certain slab was like, ow, where do we get going up to the weather height, right? Yeah. Like, so we're cutting, we had to cut a hole in the straight side.
Do you have any people taking advantage of the
Was using the street.
showers and stuff?
What's going on, man? Elbow spread it out.
Okay.
And as he was coming around.
Oh.
Right in
Maybe
there.
like a few percent overflow at
It didn't-
Y.
it didn't get hit.
And just goes
Oh,
down.
just- I mean, it was like a shot
Right?
went off and there was a huge spark.
How are you?
Real-
Thank you.
So our maintenance guy, my, told me that one day. I said, I was at June.
Am I correct?
I go in the tractor.
I thought
Yeah,
it
I
was,
think you're correct.
help
oh, I
shovel
thought it was
stuff.
for next week.
And the lines hang.
Yeah. It's got what we tell.
When it hangs like this, I just throw it up, right? And I hit the line and the
Hi, Connie.
spins off at least.
Hi, how are you?
Are you? Okay, well, that makes sense to me, right? So you grab it, and it throws it, as soon as it hits the line, there's a bolt like that near thunder. And boom!
So I heard the steering
So
wheel.
ducks, it starts to run, and then all of a
Here. Okay, I think we're unmuted. All right, we'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Over there. Yeah, we moved it around. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda, number 1, minutes. It's recommended that the Board of Education adopt minutes for the March 16th, 2022 regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed.
Second.
Second by Kieran. Any discussion, corrections, additions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. All right, item number 2, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Ryan, you have the floor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to start today a little differently than we do in the past, and that is we have something, a commendation today that we'd like to offer to a student at Norwich High School. I'm going to let Officer Clark really talk about this in great depth, but this is an opportunity for the Board of Education, obviously myself and Brian, to really recognize courage and bravery and really thinking about acting above and beyond oneself. And I think it's pretty admirable today. So really excited about the student commendation. I'd like to invite Officer Clark to be part of this.
Thank you, sir. Evan, if you would join me, good sir. For those that don't know, this is one Mr. Evan Silstra. To give a short little backstory, the Friday before vacation, took a call from a couple different employees of the district, the baseball coach, Rich Turnbull, the athletic coordinator. There was an incident, there was a thing. And without going into too much detail, there were a couple of young ladies sitting out near Midland Drive after sports practice, waiting for, I'm assuming, a ride home. There was a suspicious thing kind of going on. A young man here recognized very quickly what was going on, and through his own initiative, through his own common sense, through his own bravery and leadership, jumped on the opportunity and kind of cut off any bad from ever happening. Far above and beyond what the normal person would do, but he did it without hesitation. And it's a very uncommon thing, but it's a super welcoming thing to see that Norwich and the district is making young men like Mr. Silstra. With that said, there is a certificate of commendation, and if you don't mind, I'd like to read it. Certificate of commendation to Evan Silstra for displaying steadfast purpose of action, inner strength, courage, poise, and maturity beyond his years. During the after-school hours of the 8th of April, 2002, Mr. Silstra, without hesitation, came to the aid of 2 fellow students as they were faced with a potentially catastrophic event. Through decisive and effective decision-making, Mr. Silstra resolved the situation without further incident or issue. This demonstration of seldom matched presence of mind under the most demanding circumstances is a testament to Mr. Silstra's protective instincts and unwavering follow-through. Your actions, composure, character, and willingness to act reflect great credit upon you and are in keeping with the highest standards of the Norwich City School District. Signed by the superintendent, Mr. Ryan, along with myself. Thank you for doing the right thing.
Yeah, before you go over, let's take a picture, buddy.
Come on.
My name, Mom. I got my certificate on now. Mom, you want to get a picture as well? Come on.
I do like that. So all the purple.
Thank you.
There you go. Hugs are good.
Great.
I was getting the play-by-play from this guy.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. Thank you. Good
Care
job.
of it, okay?
For sure. I was getting the play-by-play from Evan as this was going on, directing patrol where to go, what suspicious activity was around, and he has given me better witness descriptions and ideas. The problem was rectified. He handled it. I followed up with it later on. A perfect outcome to a potentially horrific situation. So this is what Norwich is about. For sure.
Great, thank you.
Good job, Evan. Thank you.
Okay, Evan, I don't think you want to stay for the next part of the presentation. Feel free to exit stage.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now on to the budget presentation.
This is
Ryan-
the summarized version.
Ryan's
right,
gonna
Ryan?
cue
It is. It's the
I'm gonna
abridged
try to make it
version.
under 5 minutes.
The abridged version.
Try.
I'll be impressed.
So remember, this is essentially the same presentation you saw, but not in the same amount of depth that you've seen in the past, right? This is the 3-part budget presentation. If you have any questions along the way, obviously feel free to ask.
Give me 1 second while we pull this up here. Scott, I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to pull it up to share with the people online.
Okay.
But we can certainly show it here.
They'll hear you regardless, right? So.
Yeah, they should be able to hear me. All right, so this is gonna be a recap of what everybody saw last week. As Scott said, I'm gonna slice and dice it in a 3-part format, which is required by the state. So if you remember, that's the admin program capital. Okay, so we'll start quick with just a revenue recap, so we know how we're able to spend, what we're gonna spend this upcoming year. We'll do the 3-part format, quickly summarize. We're gonna hit the long-range financial planning one more time as a refresh, do the key dates, and then we will be done. So just as a refresher, everything we do when it comes to budget is built off of that mission and vision that we came up with collectively last year. Framed around, the 3 pillars that Scott's talked about multiple times: people, program, and place. And then really when you look at, revenues, how does it support that mission and vision? So recap of this is really just showing where do our revenue streams come from. So the largest source of revenue for this district is state aid, at 69%. Tax levy is 27%. This upcoming year, a little bit different. We'll talk about it in a minute. 3% is appropriated fund balance. And then finally, we have this bucket of other revenues, think Medicaid, refund of BOE services, just miscellaneous revenue sources. So state aid recap, again, the largest source of how we're able to spend more this year than we did in previous years is the state committed, and they officially passed their budget, which did phase in foundation aid. So it's gonna be 50% in 22-23, and then we'll be at 100% in 23-24. So that top line there that says foundation aid, you're seeing a 1.4 million increase year over year. You go down a few more lines, second from the bottom, BOCES aid is up $500,000. Most of that's, again, because previous years we started putting more services through BOCES, which drives aid the following year. So remember, we talked a lot about making investments and getting the BOCES services going. We're starting to reap the benefits, and we will reap the benefits in 22-23. So overall, we're looking at a state aid increase of just about $2.2 billion year over year. Looking back, hard to see, but again, that darker line is the actual state aid received going back to 2008. Looking at the light gray line, which is what we should be receiving if the foundation aid formula had been running. Again, hard to see, but in yellow way at the bottom, what that shows is a shortfall of about $61 million over that 15-year period that the district did not receive in foundation aid. So flash forward, you look towards the end of that graph, those lines are starting to converge. Next year, they should be matched. And going forward, the state has committed to funding that formula at 100%. So next largest revenue stream we have is our tax levy. So again, this is just the tax cap formula. I highlighted in yellow there, the 2% is one of many variables that make up that formula. Go to the next slide. This formula is going to be unique for every single district of the state. So no one district is going to have the same tax cap as another district. We're all a little bit different.
Despite what you hear about that 2% tax cap,
Correct.
right? Very formulaic.
Yep, so our formula results in a 1.48% increase year over year. If we were just to do a 2% straight increase on the levy, it'd be about $62,000 more than what this levy is going to be. Make sense?
Yep.
So key points from the tax levy. So again, 1.48%, that is submitting at the cap. We're not over it, we're not under it, we're at the cap. It's going to maintain relatively flat levy year over year. So that's the goal we've been preaching about since I got here. Third bullet down is the important piece, and we'll talk about this again. So we're required as part of the budget process, we're going to do budgeted capital work with general fund monies. We have to highlight that we're transferring that money from general fund to the capital fund, and then explain what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is a $100,000 capital outlay project again. That should be finishing up a lot of the wiring that we started last year. And we're also going to do a $235,000 transfer to capital project, which are those IP clocks. So that tie into our security system. It prevents our maintenance crew from having to go around and manually change the clocks every time we switch at daylight savings. So it's gonna be a benefit to the district.
Still operate on battery, by the way.
It's not a battery.
Yeah.
Comparing, so always taking the levy, looking back what it's done historically, so you can see 5-year average is 2.2%. So our current year, we're at 1.48, we're under that. And then it's nice to compare to what schools are doing in the region, and the average in the region is just over 3%. So I think this is, we're trying to do our best for our taxpayers in our town. Just putting that, so you can see it. What does that look like? So each one of those bars is the tax levy in the past 5 years, along with the variance. And again, the goal that we've been saying, and we'll continue to say, is we're going to try to keep that levy as flat as we possibly can. An illustration, again, you saw us last time, what this would potentially do to tax rates. So it's too early to tell. Tax rates come out in August. Two other huge factors in that are the assessments from local assessors and the equalization rates from the state. So all we do, the only portion we have is actually calculating the tax levy itself. Those other two pieces will impact this. So conservatively, this levy that's proposed is going to have, on average, a $20 increase year over year on your standard $100,000 home. Okay. Again, very difficult to see. We need bigger screens in here, but the third largest source of revenue is going to be that appropriated fund balance. The key for this is it's a one-time funding source, and we have plans to use this for one-time expenses. So next year, what you should see, that number will drop back down and expenses will drop back down. All you're seeing on the screen here is from our financial statement. Part of why we're doing this is we're taking it from our surplus funds from the previous year, appropriating it in so we can get to that 4% unassigned fund balance. So that is required by real property tax law. Both auditors, internal and external, have recommended we get back to that. So we're going to do our best to do that this year.
So we're at 7.57 right now,
That's where we ended last year.
right? And the auditors are recommending going down to 4.
Mhm.
We don't have to follow that though.
Yeah.
Is that your recommendation in this budget to bring it down to 4?
That is my recommendation, yes.
Well,
Great. And the budget did not increase the 4% to 8% that they were talking about.
State budget.
State budget.
so I'd rather see us get dinged than having 6% in there than go to the 4%.
Again, there's an appropriation to some other reserves, John, right? When you're basically reducing it to 4%, you're taking that money and just putting it in different reserves.
Are we maxing out those reserves?
We're getting there, we're not maxed out. We still have access to that cash, say we need it for a cash situation. So being at 4% won't necessarily hurt us.
So in simple terms, just moving it to a different pot,
You're restricting it.
but we're restricting it.
Correct.
But it's not money that's necessarily being spent right now. It's for future use. That's the term we serve.
Correct. Again, the auditor spelled out where those areas were. Remember the audit.
Where there was the shortfalls,
Right.
we needed to, okay, just making sure that's where it's still all going.
So to recap, we're looking at roughly 3.268 million year-over-year increase in revenues. Again, most of that is coming in the form of state aid. So our perpetual revenue repeating year after year. Again, we'll always be monitoring the state's budget and their ability to do that, continue to fund that. And we'll adjust our strategy accordingly. Tax levy, 1.48% increase. You'll see that again, that appropriated fund balance going up, which again will drop back off in the following year. And then other revenues remaining relatively flat. So the reason we do that first is to kind of paint the picture before we get into the three-part budget as to how we're setting the stage for the 3.268 million increase year over year.
Brian, is the state saying that we're going up so significantly because of inflationary purposes? Or are they just saying that from a state aid standpoint, 7.6 year over year is quite a bit? Is this driven off of inflation? Is it something different?
So they're in a much better position than they've been historically.
Right.
They're able to contribute as part of their budget 15% to reserves. So part of their plan is to stock money away. The goal, which they said in their presentations, was to try to prevent, the 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID, from really impacting schools. You guys remember what happened back then? It was a huge detriment.
Yeah.
The state, school budgets that are specifically like us, that are really heavily reliant on state aid.
Yeah.
They cut any percentage of that, it impacts us significantly. So their goal has been stated, we're gonna take the federal stimulus that's basically filled their coffers, set a lot of that aside over the next 5 years. And if anything does happen again, try not to take it from schools. That's why, most of the associations we belong to, like NISCUS, ASBO, are pretty confident that that budget's gonna keep us at that fully funded foundation aid going forward.
Are you worried with supplies going up though, that will eat into a lot of that increase, which is natural, natural increases in just about everything from utilities?
You have to,
Yeah.
you have to plan for that.
And that's built in here. So we're back, I talked about appropriating fund balance. In a normal year, we like to use it as almost like an insurance fund.
Right.
It's if all the high end estimates hit on our expense side, that's what, we don't think that's gonna happen, but if it does happen, that's why we're gonna appropriate that fund balance.
Understand. Okay,
And a little bit of that is baked in.
makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions, revenues before we go on? Okay, so now we know where the revenue is coming from. Where does the funding go? So that is hard to see back here, but if you start on the top right, I believe it says administrative services, that light blue bucket. Give me a second so I can read it here. So we have top right in the light blue is administration. So think of supervision of all the school district and the buildings. Go around the pie with the orange and the gray. If you really combine those two, we're spending about 15% on facilities. So the orange is our annual operations and maintenance budgets, thanks, grounds, custodial, maintenance crew. The gray is what we spend on debt service for prior capital projects. So we combine the two, we spend about 15% of the annual budget on facilities. Naturally, the largest piece, about 43%, is going to be our instruction. So teaching, pupil support services, all the stuff we spend in the classrooms directly. 4% transportation, you want 1% to support, which is the interfund transfer as a support to our school lunch funds. We actually decrease that. So the state has come out and basically made school lunch funds operating free, say for free. So we are a CEP school district. Everybody gets the free meals, right?
Lunch at no cost.
Lunch at no cost. There's a cost, it's just not more here. So anyway, we've reduced the amount we have to contribute to make the school lunch fund whole from our general fund. And then finally, the last piece, 25%, is employee benefits of all the people that fit in those other slices of the pie.
So Brian, before you come up with that, what's the average in the school district, their debt service percentage? Do you know that?
Not offhand, probably low 2s or 3%. I'd have to go back and look.
So you're saying we're much higher than the average districts in the area for debt
Oh,
service?
sorry, you mean a percent of the budget. I thought you were
Yes.
talking about interest rates.
No.
I don't know. I don't know without pulling up other districts. All districts are very unique. So if you think that schools that may be more heavily taxpayer funded, state funded, they might operate a little differently and pay for cash, plan to pay for cash for a lot of, say, their bus purchases, their capital outlays all in cash. A significant portion of their capital projects in cash. So they might, in other words, they might not carry as much debt as we have, or vice versa. So it all
No, I
depends.
actually think we're low, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what we want to see is more of the pie going into the classroom, right, in theory.
We have some of that debt service running off after this year, which will take on new, with the new capital project. What will that do to that number with it? Neil? Any idea?
Keep it the same.
Yeah.
Right at the same.
Should stay the same.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into detail. So first will be the administrative section here. So you can see overall an increase of 580,000. That's made up of a lot of things that can either be increasing or decreasing. So try to break it down into some high level categories. And then what I do below in the bullets underneath the chart is try to tell you the things that increase the most. So you can see first bullet, we budgeted. I don't know if anybody's met Raphael yet. It's fantastic, but he's out of Cap Region BOCES. He's our HR director. So there's an increase in allocation for that service. Again, BOCES aidable, so the following year you'll see an increase in BOCES aid coming in. There's contractual increases. You know, we settled the contracts last year, so you're starting to see those increases hitting the budget this year, which will be a theme throughout. You know, as everybody's salaries have gone up, that's going to be a year-over-year budget to budget increase. The instructional, I'm on the wrong slide, I'm sorry. Administration, let's see, so it's the HR service, central services is the second largest increase. There's an allocation for security, so think SRO. There's also an increase in BOCES costs, so our data management all goes through the RIC. I think you saw last time or heard last time, DCMO's budget increased almost across the board. So we're seeing that this year, again, budget to budget comparison. Supervision and instruction. So we moved a few people that were sitting in a TOSA or teacher on special assignment, serving as almost a quasi assistant principal. They moved out of that TOSA position, which is technically a teaching position, into a student success coordinating position, which means it moves from program to administration. Not necessarily an increase, but it will be an increase shown in this section of the budget. And then finally, there was a 1 FTE position increase at the high school for support in the office. And then we have a change. Last year's budget, the care program coordinator was also partially budgeted for the program section. It is now 1 FTE solely in the administrative section. All right.
I have a quick question. On the legal, is that pertaining to the increase in legal fees that we heard about at another meeting?
So we held legal flat.
Okay.
The majority of that increase is again going to be that HR.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so programs. So this is the largest piece of the budget. And it's also the piece that's increasing the largest year over year. So you can see a 2.3 million increase. First line instruction. So there's 13 FTE increase for teachers or teaching assistants or classroom support. Again, remember everybody that's currently here, budget to budget, it has that contractual piece that's increasing. And then remember 1 million of that, or approximately 1 million of that, is going to be one-time expenses that we're planning to fund with that appropriated fund balance. So you would see that next year's budget, 1 million of that to drop off at this point in time. Occupational education, that has solely gone up because of BOCES cost. So that program itself has had a lot of increasing costs, and Norwich being the largest district, we share most of that burden. Pupil services, so again, contractual increases, and then we budgeted to increase a shared position for both a psychologist and a social worker to full-time positions, so a slight increase there. And then finally, district operated transportation, that's not a capital, surprisingly, it's actually a program expense. And there are 5 positions along with contractual increases in that line as well.
Does the social worker psychologist position, is that housed at BOCE? I guess I know it's here, okay. But it's from like Q2 from BOCE. Is that what that means?
It was, then we
And now,
hired them in, yep.
got it, okay. Thanks, sorry.
So we were sharing. We are sharing currently with another school district, therefore it's a shared service through BOCES. Next year it's one FTU, Norwich, therefore it's no longer shared, so it's our employee.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
All right, and finally, capital. So the smallest increase year over year at 315,000. First line, again, contractual increases is the majority of that. And there are a couple positions in addition budgeted compared to last year. One for maintenance and then in the area of custodial. The $200,000 transfer to capital. So I'll highlight that again, just because we're required to do it. Transferring money from general to the capital fund to cover that $100,000 capital outlay project for wiring, and then the $235,000 transfer to capital project for the IP clocks. Okay. All right,
One of
so
these times, by the way, I'd like to, before a board meeting, have you guys come in a little early and I can show you some of the technology, this security upgrades that we've
Oh,
done.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah,
One
it'd
of-
be great.
one of these IP clocks aren't just clocks, right? I mean, they talk to you in a lockdown situation. They're
flashlights.
pretty intense. So really big investment the district has made in this area.
So we had this slide last time, it was broken out based on that presentation. So we took it and now changed it to the 3-part format. So again, this is just the increase year over year. Where are those expenses going? So it almost shakes out identically to how our budget is normally allocated. So 72% to program, 10% to capital, and 18% to administration. So in summary, just again, expenses matching revenues, 3.268 increase year over year. There are one-time expenses in there that will drop off. And then I think, John, to your question earlier, this is typically how you'll see districts break out in terms of their share of program admin and capital. Most are predominantly 70%, if not maybe a little more, maybe a little less in some cases, go rate to program.
And when it says program, it really means people, right?
Okay, so this slide was shown last time as well, just a recap of the budget highlights of 26 positions in total. Keep in mind, last time we showed the look back 10-year average. So we're at that 10-year average now. We're in a much better position after this budget to be in a more sustainable place with staffing. So we kind of brought the pendulum back to the middle, to the center. That 26 positions split evenly between the instructional side of the house and the support staff side of the house. Again, like I said, a lot of the increases are contractual. So with all those contracts settled the year before, we're seeing those increases this year in this budget cycle. I've already mentioned it, but the increases, 4th bullet down, increases in one-time purchases. So classroom furniture, flexible furniture, items to support our STEAM initiative. That's really what we're looking at with that one-time investment. And then finally, we're seeing our share of BOCES increase in their budget. Recap just all the other expenses that go into this, kind of the fringe expenses here, TRS, ERS rates, like it is what it is every year. Single digit, I think we're at 5% for property casualty insurance year over year, which is not bad in this inflationary environment. Even the insurance carriers are getting hit with that. Health and dental, we're close to being gone. Those are looking solid. I think we should have some more information for you shortly, but yeah, tomorrow.
I think it's
Tomorrow, Friday.
single digit though.
Should be.
Yeah, wow.
Workers' comp locked in. We locked that in last year when we switched, so no change there. Expect minimal unemployment insurance costs this year. We're hiring, we're not firing. No anticipated RAN issuance this year.
That's the first time I've heard
I know.
that. So hard to explain that too.
All right, and then finally, we are presenting a balanced budget per New York State law. So again, you're seeing $45,995,227 of revenues matched with expenses for a projected 0 surplus or deficit. Always have to mention it. Like I said before, these are kind of the things floating in the background that tie into budget. So we're monitoring all of our federal funds with their various deadlines, deadline to spend. We're going to be looking revenues post the phase in. So I expect those to flatten out, which means we have to get very sustainable with our expenses at that point. Two largest categories should be relatively flat year over year: tax cap and state aid. We will always be monitoring New York State's health, their ability to fund that formula as they promised. They've made a lot of promises in this upcoming budget. So again, we'll always be keeping our eye out, listening to the associations and adjusting our plan accordingly. And then staffing and recruiting, probably one of the biggest challenges everybody in this room faces in their own businesses or employment. We'll be continuing to fight that as well.
Knock on wood, having some really solid success with it right now. So I feel good about where we are in terms of our ability to recruit high-level staff.
Okay, so just a review of the ballot items. So there's going to be our budget on there. If you remember, the 2022 capital reserve will be on there because we are liquidating an expired capital equipment reserve. Can use those funds to start another cap reserve. Current cap reserve is fully funded. We cannot contribute to that any longer. So recommendation from attorney, simply create a new cap reserve and use those funds to start it. Currency budget will be on there. So 1.289 million and a levy of 1.025. Stop there. Connie, did you want to highlight anything?
I just wanted to be here basically to say that the last 2 years we had held the budget flat, if the horrible circumstances. This year we're asking for a small levy increase of 0.7%. And the details are spelled out for you in your paper that you have. And if there are any questions at all, I'd be happy to address them.
Questions from the board?
No.
Connie, thank you. 2 seats up for election, and then finally the items are bulleted below. Again, we're transferring $335,000 to the capital fund to take care of the capital outlay and to transfer to capital projects.
Hey, Brian.
Yep.
Are the two items on the bottom, are they with the budget or they're separate?
They're with the budget. They're not a separate proposition, but we just have to highlight them over and over and over.
Okay, so if the budget fails, what happens to that capital reserve?
Wash your mouth out.
So it depends. You can have a proposition pass and the budget go down and it's proposition pass.
Right, so, but that's not a proposition.
Correct. The 2 items below are tied to the budget.
Okay,
So the budget fails, those are not.
so if
Those
they fail,
projects
those-
are no longer in the
Michelle.
correct. So if the budget were to fail, we can choose to either go directly to contingent budget or we can put out another budget. That would be a decision, the board would have to make at that time. And that's, you don't want to go to contingent budget. There's a lot of things that we'd have to talk about.
Right.
Okay, just reminders, May 4th, this same presentation, one more time. It's the public hearing. May 17th, right here in this room, 11 and 8 p.m. will be the budget and election vote. And then hopefully, the past budget, we will be approving, or I should say, you will be approving at the May 20th board meeting. Any questions?
This is an easy one, or not even a question, but don't you prepare a publication for the public and stuff that we send out about the budget?
Postcard.
Postcard.
Yes.
Keep
Goes
it
out
as-
after the hearing.
Okay, less words, keep it visual, like the charts you did. It explains like where the money goes.
Oh, the newsletter.
Yeah,
Yes.
the newsletter or whatever. I thought maybe I haven't been paying attention to it 4 years, but I thought that was good. And people understand it better instead of just saying, showing them the numbers. That was just more of a 2 cents.
No, it's fine. That will be coming out shortly, actually.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes,
You got it.
thank you very much.
Yeah, I like seeing that we have a fund balance.
You're the pressure.
I know this is a intense and very busy time, so we appreciate all the work that all of you put into it. It's really great to have presentations that are easily understandable and straightforward, and it's great to be in the position that we are. So thank you for all that work. Okay. Mr. Ryan, anything else for your report that's not on there? No?
Nothing other than just wanted to do just a public shout out to the staff that assisted today in opening our high school specifically. A lot of food service workers, a lot of custodians over the last couple of days, maintenance, really just working really hard to open our buildings, number one, with the snowfall, ensure the safety, so the students can return. Hopefully, again, we're slated right now to open tomorrow. And then just the ability of, for our community to access not only the cafeteria for food. We did some food delivery as well. And then we had members of the community accessing showers as well. So that's off to solid effort today by many.
Great. Is there any, only because this question came to me, is there any concern, assuming we open tomorrow, that we'll have instructional staff that still don't have power, may need to shower in the morning? Will we have some opportunity, I guess, for them to come in early and do that if they feel it?
So I asked all administrators to put out messages to their
good.
Staff today. And so by 3 o'clock today, messages went out to all staff, informing them that we anticipate opening tomorrow, and locker rooms are available to anybody.
Perfect. Cool.
Is there a fear that we'll have a shortage of staff? Yes, but quite honestly, that's been the fear every day since COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm sure we'll figure it out. It'll be a scramble.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, great. All right, I think that's it for that. We'll move on to the consent items. Number 3, I'll entertain a motion to approve all the items on the consent agenda.
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton, second by Roz. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. All right, action items. Number 4 here. We got a long list, so we'll try and be quick about it. NCSD revised instructional calendar approval. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached revised NCSD instructional calendar for the 2022-2023 school year. Do I have a motion? Moved by Brian Reed, second by Roz. Any discussion?
I just want to say thanks for looking into the different options. I think it at least gives us an idea in the future if what's there. Although the last couple of days have made that one a really tough
Absolutely.
time. Like, it's the
There
first
went
time
that
I've
long weekend.
That's
So
right.
That brings up, so what if we went with a calendar that had that week off? At this point, how would a situation that happened this week affect things? So prime example.
Yeah, so you have to have 180 days of instruction, or we would have to have an additional day somewhere. So if it was a day around Memorial Day, we'd have to take that back right now, because spring break's already gone, right? So usually you pull it from spring break, that's gone. So you pull it from the next available, and that'd be around Memorial Day.
So so worst case scenario, we would lose Memorial Day potentially. Are we allowed to take
So
away a
legally,
national
you
holiday?
can't take a national holiday, so basically you'd have to stay an additional day, so you'd have to be open for school. So you could graduate on Saturday, have school open on the following Monday.
Really?
Which attendance probably wouldn't be great.
I'm gonna say no.
Senior class might not be in attendance, but
So it's a situation that we could have been in potentially this year. That's
Yeah.
it's a situation that a lot of schools are in right now.
okay.
Really, okay, yeah.
That didn't have 6 emergency days.
Hopefully we never go through this again, but
I mean, just anecdotally, I saw a calendar on a school that we used to go to years ago now, but they actually put out the dates, like you said, so they'll put out, this date is good, this date goes away if we need one more, this date goes away, and they have 3 dates that go away. And then if they hope they never get to the 4th, I guess is the point, but that's how they try to do their calendar as well, but it's challenging.
You hope for all state of emergencies to happen prior to spring break, right? So you can pull from spring break, even though there are some real issues with pulling from spring break because people already have plans and you're gonna have a staffing shortage.
Yeah.
But didn't we do that the other year? Or was that a winter break?
We did that probably 3 years ago, and I can tell you that that's one of the biggest morale busters that you'll ever have, is taking those days back, especially when you have to say to staff, oh, by the way, you're no longer approved and you can't submit a sick day. So,
Yeah.
Can I ask, I don't, what's different about this calendar than the one we saw last time?
so the one thing that is different, the reason it says revised is because there are some built-in staff development days
Okay,
as half days of instruction. So they count towards your days of instruction, they count towards your instructional hours. But one of the things that our staff, we've been doing, what are called pop-ups, PLT pop-ups in our elementary buildings, where really we're taking a team of 4 to 5 teachers, giving them subs for half a day, allowing them work time together, right? And so now we're gonna have built-in days, the entire district can do that 5 times next year. And what we're hearing from staff is we need more time to build a plan as a team. So we try to build that in there. So that's the revision.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mine's just a question, I guess. I finally went through my email today. Did anyone get that? Maggie Gregory emailed us about the calendar, which she just responded to, like, thank you for your comment.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what, yes?
She made a proposal for the alternative schedule to Mr. Cunningham, among others.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge.
Yeah, we did. Somebody did.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Property tax report card approval. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached property tax report card. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton,
Second.
second by Brian Reed. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Uncollected taxes resolution approval. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution certifying uncollected taxes to be turned over to the city of Norwich and Shenango County. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed,
second.
second by Kiernan. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. DCMO BOCES 2022-2023 Administrative Budget Resolution Approval. It's recommended that the Board of Education endorse the following resolution approving the proposed administrative budget for the Delaware, Shenango, Madison, Otsego BOCES for the 2022-2023 school year. Resolved that the Norwich City School District Board of Education does hereby approve the proposed Delaware, Shenango, Madison, Otsego BOCES administrative budget for the 2022-2023 school year in the amount of $2,726,478. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton,
Second.
second by Brian Reed. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Balloting for members of the BOCES board. It is recommended that the Board of Education cast 1 vote for each of the 3 vacancies to be filled by the following individuals for membership on the BOCES board consistent with the enclosed ballot. Gene Shields from Bainbridge Guilford CSD, John Klukowski from Norwich CSD, Dave Cruikshank from Otsego Valley CSD. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed, second. Okay, second by Brian Burton. Any questions? Discussion? All
How
those,
did I,
okay,
not that it's a huge deal, but how does John Kolkowski associate with the Norwich City School District?
I was gonna ask the same question if anybody knows. I think it might be the residents, right?
Okay,
Versus
it's a
residents.
resident.
Yeah.
I know he's been on the board for a bit of a number of years.
Yeah.
So he's not representing Norwich City School
Okay.
District, he's representing the
the district, it's
township.
the town, yeah,
Okay.
the area of our district. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. NCSD budget adoption. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the budget for the 2022-2023 school year including a capital outlay project for the data infrastructure upgrades and associated electrical work in all of the district school buildings and a transfer to capital project to finish security updates,
So moved.
upgrades. Moved by
Second.
Brian Reed, second by Raj, you got it. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. GML budget adoption. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the Guernsey Memorial Library budget for the 2022-2023 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed,
Second.
second by Kiernan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. DCMO BOCES Cooperative Purchasing Resolution Approval. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached attached DCMO BOCES Cooperative Purchasing Resolution for the 2022-2023 school year. Do I have a motion? Motion moved by Brian Burton, second. Second by Brian Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. All right, DCMO BOCES generic resolution approval. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached DCMO BOCES generic resolution for the 2022-23 school year.
So moved.
Moved by Roz, second. Second by Brian Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. DCMO BOCES food and cafeteria supplies resolution approval. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached DCMO BOCES food and cafeteria supplies resolution for the 2022-23 school year. Do I have a motion? Motion. Moved by Brian Burton, second by Roz. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. BT BOCES IPA resolution approval. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached BT BOCES IPA resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed,
Second.
second by Roz. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of resolution for lease of district classrooms for autism and ADHD services. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached resolution for lease of district classrooms for autism and ADHD services.
So moved.
Moved by Roz. Second. Second by Brian Reed. All those, are any discussion?
I should have read this deeper. Is this the Dr. Lopez? This is,
Grasshopper program.
okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Really excited about this. That's good. Partnership.
It's great. Agree.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Seeker Type 2 resolution for the transfer to capital project. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the attached Seeker Type 2 resolution for the transfer to capital project. Do I have a motion? Moved by Brian Burton, second. Second by Brian Reed. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. All right, almost there. Section 125 plan resolution. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the following section 125 plan resolution. Whereas the Norwich City School District wishes to adopt a section 125 plan for the voluntary participation of all of its eligible employees. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the Norwich City School District hereby adopts the plan for the voluntary participation of all eligible employees. And it is further resolved that the superintendent hereby authorized to take such actions and enter such agreements as are required or necessary for the adoption, implementation, and maintenance of the plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed. Second. Brian Burton. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So carried. Omni 403B resolution approval. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the following Omni 403B resolution. Whereas the Norwich City School District wishes to adopt a 403B retirement plan for the voluntary participation of all of its eligible employees. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the Norwich City School District hereby adopts the plan for the voluntary participation of all eligible employees, and it is further resolved that the superintendent hereby is authorized to take such actions and enter such agreements as are required or necessary for the adoption, implementation, and maintenance of the plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Brian Reed, second.
Second.
Second by Roz. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Approval of the 2020-2021 internal audit corrective action plan. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the 2020-2021 internal audit corrective action plan. Do I have a motion? Moved by Brian Reed, second by Roz. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? So carried. All right. It almost, yeah, there's a lot here.
Close.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the personnel recommendations.
Motion.
Moved by Brian Burton,
Second.
second by Roz Durensis. Any discussion or questions?
My only comment, we talked about recruitment, obviously it's challenging for all of us. Retention is equally challenging to see. Well, I feel like you see some of that here. Is Raphael helping in that way too, or have we considered trying to come up with a retention plan, something, or are you already doing that kind of thing?
Yeah, we're working on a plan right now, will be in effect July 1st.
Awesome. Cool. Perfect. Because I think that's at least for me, on the professional side, we looked at recruitment first, and that's the natural place to go. And then you quickly realize that it's a lot easier to just retain your talent than after recruiting talent. Obviously, you need both, but cool. We'll look forward to hearing about it.
Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Public comment. Do we have
Chris.
any over there?
Lucky day, Chris. You
No one on there? Okay.
Oh, did everyone know, if you want to do public comment, they sign in? Okay, that's what I thought.
There's somebody wants it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You were just a new face, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
if you knew the
Not a problem.
process.
Real quick, just so we have it on record, fill out this information. Okay.
Thank you, Ross.
Yeah. No.
Chris will read the rules real quick and then he'll be able to speak. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, anytime we have public comment, we read our little rule list here, and the North City School District Board of Education encourages public participation in board meetings. Any individual wishing to speak, the Board of Education will do so under the following guidelines. Speakers will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes, and the entire open forum to a maximum of 30 minutes, which may be waived by the majority vote of the board. The sign sheet's circulated, obviously you filled it out. Speakers are asked to stand, state their name, address, and their topic of discussion. Speakers will not be allowed to personally attack any board member, administrator, employee, community member, or any of the public present. Also, no comments by the speakers will be permitted that deal with executive session subjects, such as individual personnel matters, or discipline issues pertaining to specific individuals, including students. The board president will respond to questions or refer to them to the superintendent. If a question cannot be answered during the board meeting, it will be researched and followed up by the superintendent or their designated. So, we have Latoya Jenkins.
I reside at 30 Drive over in Georgetown Apartments. I'm talking on racial and bullying that's happening in the school. I have 5 children in the Norwich City School District, 3 of which have been suspended from the middle school this year. My children, as well as other Black children, are being subjected to racism and bullying in the school. Inequity is the lack of fairness or justice. I feel my children are being targeted with racialized violence and then being punished for defending themselves. The school is not just allowing racism, but encouraging it by punishing children who stand up for themselves. This is the school to prison pipeline. We see this regularly with abuse victims. In the US, the fastest growing population of inmates is women. It is estimated that 77% of women incarcerated for violence were engaged in self-defense against their abuser. I would like to see a policy aimed at addressing racial inequity put into place. I also would like a committee to be formed to aid in racial equity and address the bullying. In the event the school doesn't do anything about the situation, the community will take this in their own hands. An email will be provided to the community to report the issues of racism and bullying. As reports come in, we will be mobilizing community members to respond to the school to protect vulnerable children, since the school does not seem to care.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you.
All right. That's all I have on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Brian Reed, second by Roz.
Yes.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Thank you very much.
Okay.